You do not want to be raptured. Two in a field. One will be taken away, one will be left behind. You want to be the one that is left behind. Let me tell you why. Matthew 24, verse 40. Two in a field. One will be taken away, one will be left behind. One of the famous rapture verses. Now, I'm going to get to what that verse really means in a moment. But first, I just want to have a look at the rapture. The rapture is not going to happen. The rapture is not in the Bible. For the early church, for the first couple of centuries, nobody believed in the idea of a rapture. It only started in the 19th century with someone named John Nelson Darby. What he did is he took a couple of verses in the Bible, in different books in the Bible. He took them completely out of context and put them together to come up with this idea of a pre-tribulation rapture. But if you read each of those verses in context, you will see not one of the books in the Bible talks about a rapture. One of the famous ones is 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16 to 18. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. That might sound like the rapture, right? Until you read it in context. The couple of verses before that, what happened was people at the time that Paul was writing this, at that time, people were expecting the second coming of Jesus to come any day. And what happened was some people started dying. So the rest of the people started to think, but what about those that believed in Jesus but then already died? Then Paul explained to them, what's going to happen is when Jesus comes, we're all going to be caught up in the air to go and meet Jesus, including the ones that already died. They will be woken up first. That is what Paul is explaining in chapter 4. Now, in the first century, people reading this would have known exactly what Paul was talking about. In the first century, if a king was coming to a city, one of his cities, then the people in the city would have gone out of the city to meet the king. The king then wouldn't have turned around and come back 7 years later. The king would have come into the city with the people that went out to meet him. And this is what Paul was talking about. We being caught up into the clouds to meet Jesus, because it was his second coming that Paul was describing. If we keep on reading, now the next verse after verse 18 is chapter 5 of Thessalonians. But remember, in the beginning, there were no verses or chapters. Those were added much later, many, many years later. So for originally when people was reading this letter, they would have just continued reading. There wouldn't have been any gap. And if we just read the very next couple of verses, then in Thessalonians 5, then Paul talks about the sudden destruction of everybody else that will happen at that same time. There is no 7-year tribulation period that's going to start. You will not find the idea of a rapture in the Bible if you read it in context. Nobody believed it. Jesus talked about the end times if we looked at Mark, Matthew, and Luke, and he did not describe this rapture that is so popular. Now, there's many reasons why it became popular that I don't want to go into now. I want to focus on the two in the field. So it's Matthew 24, verse 40 to 44. Then, two will be in the field. One will be taken and one will be left. Two women will be grinding a meal together. One will be taken and one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of a house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So, together with this idea of two in a field, we also see the metaphor of the owner of the house and the thief in the night. I just did a video called What Was was Jesus a failed apocalyptic prophet, where I go into detail looking at these metaphors of a thief in the night and the owner of the house. And in that video, I explain that if we go back to the Gospel of Mark, the owner of the house can be understood to be just problems coming that Jesus was warning us about. Wars, earthquakes, pestilence. Jesus was warning his people that there's difficult times coming. And the owner of the house coming back unexpectedly can just be that, difficult times coming, not necessarily the second coming of Jesus or the coming of the Son of Man. When we go to Matthew and Luke, then it becomes the authors of Matthew and Luke understood that to be Jesus. Now, in that video, I also explained that in the Gospel of Thomas, that I and some biblical scholars believe has an earlier date than the Gospel of Mark, there's also a thief in the night and the owner of the house. But in the Gospel of Thomas, it's clear that it's just problems, difficult times that will come unexpectedly that Jesus wanted us to be prepared for. And we can see this idea of the thief in the night and the owner of the house being Jesus started to develop over time, but that was not the original message of Jesus. Jesus was simply warning us that there will be difficult times ahead that we need to be prepared for. If you want to have a look at that video, I go into a lot more detail, and I also explain what the apocalyptic view of Jesus really was. But to see Matthew 24 in a bit more context, to see what the two in the field is all about, we need to start a couple of verses earlier. So let's start at verse 37. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day of Noah entered the ark, and they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. You see, it's the same. The two will be in the field. The ones that are taken away is the same as in Noah's time, when those that were not prepared were taken away by the flood. Noah and his family was prepared for what was coming. They were left behind. Everybody else were taken away by the flood. And in the very next verse, this metaphor of two in the field comes up. Two will be in the field. The ones that are not prepared will be swept away with the coming flood. Now, we can confirm that this is what the author of Matthew meant, that the ones taken away will be the ones that's taken to a very bad place. We can confirm that because Luke had the same idea, but in more or less the same story. But in Luke's account, Jesus actually tell his disciples where the people that are taken away will be going. It's in Luke 17, verse 34 to 37. I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed. One will be taken and the other left. There will be two women grinding meal together. One will be taken and the other left. Then they asked him, Where, Lord? He said to them, Where the corpse is, there the eagles will gather. Jesus tells us that the ones that are taken away will be taken to a terrible place. Now, people will say that, no, the corpse is Jesus and the eagles are gathering to Jesus. Really? Think about that. Get this image of a corpse being torn apart by eagles. Is that the metaphor that Jesus is going for to explain to us what will happen when we meet him? That is not what Jesus is talking about. A corpse being torn apart by vultures. That's not the place you want to be. You do not want to be that corpse. Jesus is telling us there's a terrible place that people will go to if they are not prepared. In the Gospel of Thomas 61, Jesus also talks about, he says, two will recline on one couch. One will live and one will die. What he was talking about is two people will find themselves in the exact same situation. the one will flourish and continue to live, while the other one, in the exact same circumstances, will perish. Why? Because the one is prepared. The one is spiritually, mentally, physically prepared for difficult times that will come, for problems that will come. Just think of something like COVID, for instance. It came unexpectedly, like a thief in the night. Some people were prepared and it was just better for them, while others weren't. Some businesses survived while others didn't. We need to be prepared. Two in a field. One will be taken, one will be left behind. Make sure that you are the one that is left behind, that you are the one that remains standing. Jesus is giving us practical advice, and that we will see that as we go more into the apocalyptic message of Jesus. A lot of what he was saying was actual practical advice on how to prepare for difficult times, because according to Jesus, difficult times will come. Now, we're going to look at Revelation, the prophecies in Daniel. I'm going to do videos on all that, and you will see it's not what you think. I will look at in detail what Jesus thought of this whole idea of the end of the world, second coming. We're going to go into that. We're also going to look at the afterlife and all that. But for now, make sure that you are prepared for difficult times, because the flood is coming. You need to make sure that you will remain standing when it comes. Thank you for watching.